Hey there, fellow wanderers. Tonight, we drift back into a time when the air itself seemed to tremble, a world where life felt delicate, fleeting, and silence spoke of something looming. Step with me through the mist and into 14th century Europe. The streets are lined with cobblestones, worn smooth by countless feet. The marketplace hums. Voices rise and fall over baskets of fruit, bolts of cloth, and the sharp scent of spice caravans come from distant shores. But listen closely. Beneath the bustle, something feels off. A stillness in the air, a hush behind the noise. The Black Death, they'll call it, a name spoken in dread, whispered first in corners, then shouted from rooftops. An unseen presence creeping across borders, behind wagons, between breaths. As the smoke of village fires clings to your cloak and whispers curl like fog around your boots, it becomes clear. You probably won't survive this, but tonight you will observe it. Safely, curiously, and with the distance only history can provide. So before we walk deeper into the shadows of this pivotal era, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if stories of fear, resilience, and transformation stir something in you. Drop a comment below. Where are you tuning in from? And what time would the church bells toll where you live? Now dim the lights, let your fan hum like wind through plague-ridden alleys. Let's begin. In this world painted with medieval hues, you find that survival required more than luck. Many factors affected the lived experience during this period. And it wasn't just the disease itself. Economic rank, lifestyle, and sheer happenstance played a larger role than one might assume. Picture yourself as a townsfolk of this era, living amidst rows of tightly packed wooden houses, their eaves sagging slightly under the weight of age. The lanes are busy with people, vendors hawking their goods, peasants trudging with their heads down, and the occasional laughter from street musicians trying to lighten the mood. In the early years before the plague swept across Europe, there was a certain familiarity. People managed through simple routines, grounded in the cycles of planting and harvest, buying and selling, feasting and fasting. The hum of manual labour sang from the fields and workshops, steeples cast long shadows over the town squares, and now and then news from the far reaches of the known world arrived with merchants and travellers. The journeys were romanticised, a break from the monotony of daily labour. But soon these bearers of tales became harbingers of darker stories from the east, a mysterious disease, said to be carried by traders and soldiers, making its relentless approach. It's remarkable, really, how quickly fortunes could change. The bustling trade routes that connected Europe to Asia and the Mediterranean were veins through which not only goods flowed, but also news, and eventually disease. Just as easily as these roads offered prosperity, they became conduits of calamity. Historians still argue whether this was inevitable or if certain unforeseeable catalysts accelerated the journey of the plague. Whatever the case, the impending shadows would challenge Europe's ability to cope, adapt, and survive. As the plague's whispers turned into roars, you can imagine how some folks went into denial, clutching desperately onto it'll-pass-us-by thoughts. After all, rumours and tales of ominous occurrences frequently circulated in this time. Not every tale of doom manifested. For those in bustling port towns, the danger felt more immediate. Ships arrived at harbours carrying not just spices and silk, but also the first waves of the pandemic. The feeling of dread was palpable, as though you could almost see the weight of it hanging in the air. The fear wasn't just of the disease, but of the profound disruption it brought with it. You might feel a chill remembering that the Black Death didn't just threaten life, but the very fabric of society. There was an undercurrent of panic about how to maintain order, feed mouths, and keep the rhythm of daily life amidst such pervasive dread. Though the swarm of disease seemed merciless, you couldn't help but notice pockets of resilience and fragments of hope in unlikely places. As fear spread, so did a remarkable spirit of invention. In the face of looming catastrophe, people clung to whatever measures they could devise, be it religious fervor, bizarre folk tales, or early medical practices, to protect themselves and those they loved. These early signs of response are what set the groundwork for the ensuing years of survival tactics and adaptations. When you lift the medieval veil, peering deeper into these communities, one remarkable fact stands out. Despite the foreboding darkness, the human spirit sought ways to endure and preserve life. Small communal bonds often grew stronger under pressure, with neighbours leaning on one another, sharing resources, and sometimes even laughter. At this moment, you appreciate how unpredictably resilient and interconnected survival could be in these trying times. As the twilight of the Middle Ages deepens, you find yourself absorbed into this world's knotty tapestry, a weave of affliction and triumph. And while the spectre of the plague continues its furtive crawl, the heart of humanity beats defiantly, poised for the challenges to come. You find yourself engulfed by the thickening tension that clouds the medieval streets, as word of the plague's unyielding advance spreads from town to town, empire to empire. Surrounded by a disquieting sense of anticipation, you watch the normally vivacious gatherings thin out. The marketplace is eerily quiet. Where there once was the vibrant din of bargaining and bartering, there now lingers a subdued murmur of cautious transactions. People shuffle past one another with furtive glances, clutching their mantles close. You can almost hear the unspoken question on everyone's minds: who will be next? As the arrival of the plague in your territory becomes imminent, measures of prevention and survival seem paradoxically more desperate, yet more calculated. In cities across Europe, from the grandeur of Venice's canals to the bustling thoroughfares of Paris, a palpable fear tightens its grip. It's no great mystery how quickly this apprehension escalates into full-blown panic. People flee cities en masse, creating ghost towns where prosperity once bloomed. The roads, once conduits of trade and communication, become ominous pathways fraught with uncertainty and superstition. Families travel with whatever they can carry, children in tow, moving not just away from the infected, but also towards a sliver of hope that they might find refuge elsewhere. Imagine yourself walking among these upheaved pilgrims. Every creak of a wagon wheel, every furtive whisper, a reminder of the life left behind. Quarantine measures emerge like makeshift band-aids on gaping societal wounds. In Dubrovnik, one of the earliest documented quarantines is enacted, with ships being held at sea before they are allowed to dock, marking an early attempt to stem the tide of infection. The term itself, quarantine, derives from the Italian 40 giorni, 40 days, which was the required duration of isolation, albeit with mixed effectiveness. Yet this concept of enforced isolation did little to ease the wider tide of trepidation sweeping across the lands. Historians still debate whether these measures were born of genuine public health strategies or sheer desperation. Either way, you might commend the rugged ingenuity of the time, which saw cities and towns adopt broader strategies, ranging from the sensible to the absurd in their bid to thwart the oncoming plague. Sanitation efforts became more pronounced, with reliable resources like clean water suddenly becoming paramount for survival. The fear of contamination took many forms. Some communities resorted to barricading entire neighborhoods, hoping physical barriers would halt the disease. It becomes an interesting, if grim, spectacle, as barricades of timber and brick rise not as symbols of commerce or celebration, but rather as desperate sentinels of survival. Back within village confines, you notice the furrowed brows of traders who've reluctantly ceded their once thriving booths. Fishmongers, weavers, and cobblers face dwindling customers, their livelihoods hanging precariously. It's here you spy a determined man attempting to sell what appears to be, of all things, a rat repellent. A futile gesture perhaps, though it does offer a wry smile to those hardened against the fear these little beasts inspire. Stranger still are the remedies and talismans people cling to in their dire wait. Garlic amulets become surprisingly popular as makeshift charms promising protection. Some believe that sprinkling vinegar or even carrying fragrant herbs wards off the tainted air, a quirky nod to early, albeit misguided, preventative medicine. As you brush past these hopeful defenders against a microscopic threat, you can't help but ponder at their hopeful, sometimes bizarre resourcefulness. Outside the walls of towns and burgeoning cities, rural populations grapple with these looming shadows in their own distinct manner. Small villages closer knit and perhaps more insulated experience a unique variation of the tension that's by now a bitter undertone to daily tasks. Rose-tinted it might be to assume that rural dwellers then were entirely isolated from the urban despair, yet the large distances between settlements do slow the plague's march. With entire regions in the grip of fear, daily life must adapt. You hear the distant bells of churches ringing more frequently now. A call to prayer, a call to arms, or, too often, a toll for the deceased. It is within this melding of occurrences that survival strategies continue to evolve. driven as much by communal wisdom as by sheer necessity. Here, woven through the chronicles of dread, lies the story of human endurance, crafting new paths from familiar soil. Perched on the edge of this unfolding calamity, you witness humanity's tenacity, quieter than the cacophony of fear and slower to unfurl, but vibrant as life itself. People, in their innovative and sometimes peculiar ways, brace for the challenge as the world around them teeters in the balance. While the spectre of the plague casts a haunting shadow, the seeds of survival, resilience, and eventual recovery are sown deep within their spirit. As you continue your journey through the tumultuous world of the 14th century, the reality of life in urban centres during the onslaught of the Black Death unfolds before you, akin to turning pages of a grim, introspective tale. You're transported into a cityscape teeming with life, yet paradoxically stifled by the looming dread of death. Here, the intricate dance of daily survival takes on new and urgent choreography as the plague upends everything that was once familiar. In the bustling confines of medieval cities like Florence or London, where narrow streets swell with foot traffic and the scent of open-air markets, life becomes a precarious balance. The densely packed populace is quickly discovered to be a breeding ground for the plague. You catch glimpses of hurried city officials, their faces etched with resolve, trying to impose order amidst chaos. They scramble to enact makeshift health ordinances, a Herculean task in an era where sanitation is barely understood. You see how streets, once lively arteries of commerce and camaraderie, have become narrow corridors of silent apprehension. The ever-present spectre of illness lurks in doorways and alleyways. In true medieval fashion, rumours of cures abound, getting whispered more often like sacred chants than anything rooted in fact. How ironic, you muse, in an age imbued with religious devotion and yet seemingly forsaken. Navigating these urban warren becomes an exercise in vigilance and swift adaptation for its citizens. Shops, where the clatter of trade once resonated, now sit gloomily shuttered, only occasionally flickering to life under the hopeful gleam of candlelight as a guarded transaction takes place. Imagine yourself as a shopkeeper in these trying times. The sense of normalcy disrupted by the ever-present anxiety drumming in your chest. Your patrons approach with caution, leaving coins in glass jars nestled within shop entrances, a peculiar yet necessary barrier against the unknown. Historians still argue whether urban centres were more devastatingly afflicted due to geography or population density, but the impact was clear. Cities were redefined. The amicable buzz of social gatherings quietened, replaced by solitude or thinly veiled desperation. Taverns, once echoing with laughter and song, become lone sanctuaries, their doors open only to the brave, or perhaps the foolhardy. Cultural rituals find themselves altered by necessity. Weddings are whispered of as simpler affairs, hushed by the silent scream of propriety too critical to ignore, yet too costly to flaunt. As for the bittersweet occasion of funerary rites, they transform remarkably in scope and somberness, no longer personal farewells but hurried communions with mortality, where only the closest family attends, and burial grounds expand at alarming rates. Amongst all this, resourcefulness prevails, an unexpected signature to the urban plight. Street performers and entertainers, suddenly without audience, adapt their craft to convey messages of hope or document the experience through art and song. You glimpse a street minstrel recounting tales of resilience, her voice a soft lull amidst tumult, reminding those around her of a humanity struggling to shine through the murk. Modern travellers, like yourself, might ponder over the novelty of these societal adjustments, derived from such hopeless necessity. Take, for instance, how social structures strain under the weight of loss. The haunting prospect of entire families succumbing to the disease leaves power vacancies that ripple through the ranks. Active roles that were once the domain of fathers and stout-hearted matriarchs now pass to children or even neighbours, reinforcing the resilience afforded by communal bonds. Resilience, as it turns out, is elemental here, just as ingrained into these urban veins as the very cobblestones cradling your step. Like a shadow following you through the narrow lanes, you sense the persistent spirit of survival manifested through cooperation, innovation, and the small mercies extended between peers. Creative and ingenious solutions emerge. City councils deliberate on how to financially support those incapable of working without the inevitable consequence of bankruptcy. A nascent concept of welfare enveloped within protective community mores. Bakery storefronts, feeding the city's hunger, now become complicit in the barter economy. Wheat for wine, bread for cheese, a testament to endurance born of necessity. As you weave through this tapestry of urban survival, you marvel at how the spectre of the Black Death, once faceless and unrelenting, is met with humanity's refusal to be cowed into submission. Through the fog of fear, an unyielding spirit rises, steering its people through the brittle night, buoyed by faith, resolve, and the age-old truth. Life, even in its most fragile form, is worth striving for. Leaving behind the dense tapestry of urban centres and their bustling, embattled streets, you venture out into the more pastoral landscapes, where the countryside unfolds with open arms of rolling hills and fragrant fields. The countryside offers a contrasting canvas to the crowded cities, with its slower rhythms and more spacious surroundings. Yet even here, the shadow of the Black Death does not spare its reach. As the plague seeps into these tranquil settings, survival takes on a different hue, coloured by the contours of rural life. Imagine yourself as a simple farmer, residing in a small village nestled within a patchwork of fields. The days stretch out longer here, without the constant clamour of city life. With the arrival of the plague, villagers find themselves confronted with an invisible invader. A silent trespasser in buttermilk dawns and dust-rimmed. You sense the initial disbelief. A disease decimating cities so far removed from the familiar cadence of ploughing and planting. Yet denial soon gives way to action, as whispers of the plague's approach transform into urgent calls for precautionary measures. One mainstream historical fact shines through here. Rural communities often reacted by sealing themselves off from the outside world. An early form of quarantine in its purest, most basic implementation. Roads leading into villages become less travelled, and encounters with itinerant traders or outsiders are eyed with suspicion. It's a measure born out of both practicality and a deep-seated need to protect one's own. The countryside lifestyle, with its inherent disconnection from sprawling urban centres, offers a mixed blessing. While the spread of disease might initially slow due to relatively isolated living, the eventual arrival carries its own unique dread. Social structures, while less compact than in cities, rely heavily on neighbourly collaboration. The fallout from even a single household succumbing to illness can ripple mightily through a village. In these open fields, the emphasis on self-sufficiency grows. You see families tending to their gardens with renewed fervour, coaxing life from the earth to sustain their own. The livestock, normally a symbol of prosperity, turns into a critical lifeline. Their care and management transform from routine chores into vital acts of survival. Quirky or fringe tidbit, some villagers begin to rely on fabled healing properties of animal companions, an expression of hope intertwined with simple superstition. Isolation doesn't only pertain to tangible measures. Families themselves adopt physical distancing long before it becomes a known health recommendation, keeping close to their own kin while eschewing large gatherings. Churches, normally the backbone of social and spiritual life, witness sparse attendance worshipping from afar becomes a testament in faith. Yet, despite these measures, the spectre of uncertainty lingers. You glimpse smoke rising from fields in the distance, a farmer burning the remains of withered crops believed tainted, an act at once futile and strangely therapeutic amidst the encompassing chaos. This period ekes out the deep resilience of rural communities. You notice the subtle shifts as they rediscover and harness their core strengths: secure manoeuvreness, ingenuity, and an innate connection to the land. The simplicity of country living sees its own evolution in response to adversity. Seeds from thriving crops are shared amongst neighbours. Small tokens of solidarity become gestures of significance. The quiet strength of the countryside survives not solely through sweeping gestures, but through a collective acknowledgement of their interconnectedness. You ponder how this plays out across Europe, with each region finding its rhythm in the face of the plague's discordant intrusion. Remember that quirky belief about animals? Scholars debate whether some of these practices, like housing chickens under beds to absorb the miasma, were rooted in accidental wisdom or sheer myth, yet they highlight a spirit of trial and error that mirrors early scientific endeavours. These acts, no matter how curious, are threads from which the wider tapestry of resilience is woven. As night falls over the open landscape, stars flickering like embers in the expanse of velvet sky, you take in the enormity of the journey these people faced, not just in distance travelled, but in adaptation and heart. Even as silence looms heavily over the tucked-away hamlets and wind-swept meadows, this silence echoes not defeat but perseverance. Through the fields and pastures, the countryside endures, mirroring humanity's broader tale, one of survival amidst shadows, of life's threads stubbornly rewoven, even in the darkest of times. As you walk through time, into the eerie corridors of medieval medicine, you encounter figures both iconic and enigmatic: the plague doctors. Dressed in long coats with peculiar beaked masks, these practitioners of the art of healing are at once fascinating and haunting. Their role is integral to our journey as we explore how people sought desperately to survive the Black Death through often bizarre and rudimentary medical practices. Imagine yourself standing on a cobblestone street, observing as a plague doctor passes by, their presence drawing cautious stares and hushed conversations. These doctors, often clad in leather or wax-coated garments, sport their signature masks filled with scent-infused material, making them look somewhat avian, and intended to ward off the disease through the mask's noses, packed with aromatic herbs and flowers. A quirky tidbit, indeed, these masks were designed for protection, grounded in the belief that disease spread through miasma or bad air. The approach of these doctors to medicine was a curious amalgam of superstition, religion, and emerging scientific inquiry, a reflection of the era's transitional understanding of health. While the modern observer might find humour in some of their antics, such as suggesting patients smoke tobacco to cleanse the lungs, it's crucial to remember that these efforts were sincere attempts to rationalise and combat an unfathomable adversary. In the dimly lit chambers of their makeshift clinics, these physicians employed a variety of treatments. Bloodletting was common, the memory of which leaves a visceral impression. Leech or lancet, the aim was to balance the body's humours, an endeavour as beneficial as it was misguided. The doctors believed that freeing the body of excess blood would purify the patient's diseased state. You can almost imagine the hushed whispers of hope from those huddled on straw mats, clutching talismans as the doctor approached. Quarantine, a practice we visited earlier, is reimagined within city confines, as anyone showing symptoms is swiftly relocated to plague houses, institutions dedicated to confining the ill. Here, resources are strained and conditions are bleak, but these establishments represent an earnest attempt at containment, early nods at the notion of public health, despite the grim noting by historians that the efforts often equated more to negligence than care. What must it have been like for the doctors, you wonder, trudging through the morass of despair, facing palpable death daily? They were regarded with suspicion and hope in equal measure, their presence signalling both the acknowledgement of disease and, paradoxically, the prospect of salvation. It's a paradox that casts a long shadow, one under which age-old debates arise. Historians still argue whether the doctor's contributions, though initially ineffective, paved the way for significant medical advancements. Step back for a moment. Observe not just the doctors, but the effects their presence and practices have on those around them. It becomes a scene of gentle folly and sombre wisdom alike. Families clutching desperate to their afflicted kin react in different ways. Some embrace palliative measures of plant-dried poultices or aromatic baths, while others clasp hands and recite fervent prayers, as though sculpting hope from faith itself. Against this backdrop of affliction, you find glimmers of emergence in scientific endeavour. Those early tendrils of scientific thought are woven into the existing scientific approach, a marriage of observation, experimentation, and hypothesis. Though in its infancy this combination admits neither guilt nor absolution, but instead propels the curiosity that eventually forms modern scientific methodologies. The beaked physicians, armed with rudimentary understanding and a tenuous composure, leave a legacy that transcends their time. Their oddly shaped silhouettes against the medieval skyline symbolize both a bygone struggle and a step toward future insight. Despite their occasional failures and the macabre nature of their work, their presence persists, a testament to human tenacity in the abyss of crisis. In the twilight of these efforts, where hope and desperation intermingle, you find humanity's unmistakable signature, where innovation is born from necessity and perseverance carves relief from overwhelming despair. As the doctors retreat into the night, shadows lengthening at their feet, they leave behind questions unanswered, futures unsealed, and a tapestry of survival woven with strands of determination and courage. As you journey deeper into the medieval tapestry spun by the Black Death, the pervading presence of religion affirms itself as a cornerstone of medieval life, now magnified under the scrutiny of crisis. The Great Pestilence, as it is often called, not only tested the limits of human endurance, but also catalyzed a fervent tide of religious zealotry and piety. Churches, monasteries, and cathedrals, normally bastions of solace, become epicenters of desperate longing for divine intervention. Imagine yourself walking through the wooden doors of a cathedral, where the smell of incense mingles with the coolness of stone columns and hushed whispers of prayer. The air is thick with supplication as individuals gather in growing numbers, seeking solace from the divine amid the chaos of the plague. As you stand amongst the congregation, you notice the range of emotions etched on their faces: fear, hope, and a desperation that can only be born from a life overshadowed by uncertainty. The clergy, though vested in religious authority, find themselves stretched impossibly thin. They preside over hastily conducted masses, their voices echoing in both praise and lament. Just as notable are the penitential processions, anguished pleas to a higher power as throngs of believers parade through the streets, entreating mercy and forgiveness. Processions are often led by the Flagellants, groups of fervent religious zealots who travel from town to town, publicly flogging themselves as an act of penance, hoping to appease divine wrath. With tattered robes and bleeding backs, they create a curious spectacle, one simultaneously stirring and unsettling. You might find yourself marveling at their resolve, questioning if their actions stem from pure faith or a profound fear of what awaits beyond this life. In this era, faith becomes both a compass and a challenge. Scrambling to comprehend why God would allow such cruelty, communities partake in intense and sometimes extreme forms of devotion. Some believe the plague is divine retribution for humanity's sins, driving them to seek ever more fervent channels of worship. Yet, with religion's expanding role, you notice its dual impact. The sacred texts, while providing comfort, raise questions among many, but it becomes a point of scholarly intrigue, and historians still argue whether the Church exacerbated the people's fear or if it offered a stabilizing force during such tumultuous times. Faith is both a mask and a mirror here, capturing the essence of human bewilderment and strength. As days blend into nights, underscored by relentless prayers, you observe an interesting shift. The role of religious institutions evolves. They become both places of refuge and nodes of disaster relief as their congregations grapple with overwhelming need. Monasteries offer necessities. Food and shelter become extensions of their faith's compassion and practicality. With this generosity, the Church's influence grows, not just as a spiritual guide, but as a crucial societal pillar. This period of crisis redefines many relationships, with faith leading to both moments of heightened devotion and spurts of doubt that ripple through generations. From these stone sanctuaries, human voices rise, harmonizing ancient hymns with new chants forged in trial. A certain resilience pulses through, woven into the fabric of the era's consciousness. A whisper of hope in a cacophony of despair. You sense the emergence of deeper contemplation, a quest for understanding that transcends immediate mortality and seeks higher purpose. Think of how, in your own journeys, the essence of faith, be it through religious practices or a personal quest for meaning, has mirrored these medieval struggles. Each whispered prayer and each candle-lit vigil forms a narrative thread connecting the past with the present, binding seekers of solace through time. In reflecting upon this symbiotic dynamic between the disease and divine relationship, you find the narrative of human experience complex, mystifying, and enduring. From the expansive halls of cathedrals to the intimate solitude of cloistered monks, faith remains a profound presence, guiding, challenging, and ennobling, even as shadows dance long under the imposing spectre of the Black Death. Venture further into the deeply woven fabric of medieval life, and you're enveloped by a tapestry laden with the colourful threads of superstition and mythology. As the Black Death casts its grim shadow over Europe, the desperation to understand, control, or even appease this unfathomable force gives rise to a multitude of beliefs and practices, many of which flit between the strange and the heartbreaking. Amid the usual clamour of town cries and bustling markets, whispers of superstition grow louder, often shaping daily life more than the edicts of kings or the wisdom of scholars. Picture yourself weaving through crowds, overhearing snippets of conversation, talk of witches' curses, celestial omens, and the peculiar alignment of the stars. While today these might evoke a bemused smile, in the throes of the Black Death they held a potent sway over the medieval psyche. You notice talismans being sold alongside goods at market stalls, each trinket offering its own unique promise of protection. A bit of squirrel fur here, a raven feather there. Ingredients in the ever-growing compendium of plague remedies. Families clutch these amulets earnestly, each holding a whisper of hope more powerful, perhaps, than the inert charms themselves. It's fascinating to consider how, during such a time, animals themselves become embroiled in human attempts to rationalize the plague. Cats, for instance, are alternately revered and reviled. Depending on the community, they are either seen as demonic creatures to be feared or as protectors against the rodent carriers of disease. Inconsistencies in beliefs about animals only heighten the atmosphere of confusion and fear. Historians still debate the extent to which these superstitions either obscured the efforts towards scientific understanding or provided a necessary psychological balm for a population grasping for any semblance of control. Simultaneously, interpretations of celestial events come alive in this context. As comets and eclipses are seen as harbingers of doom, the sky itself becomes a scroll upon which destiny and disaster are etched. Among these varied beliefs, personal stories of survival and loss emerge, each woven with elements of faith, luck, and misinterpretation. You might imagine a mother hiding her children away at the first flicker of a shooting star, attempting to stave off ill fortune with a gesture as powerful as her love. In this world racked by intangible fears, some townsfolk take refuge in old, whispered tales known as ximilia, ximilibus curantur, or like. For every construct born of logic, an equally mystical counterpart exists, each more eccentric than the next. Burying rotting fish near doorways to absorb malicious odours or lighting fires to sweeten the air all became acts of eager defiance against an unseen foe. There is a wondrous if dark creativity in these attempts, tangible remnants of a world tirelessly fighting back. And through it all, dark humour seeps into storytelling, an unanticipated side effect of dealing with daily dread. You catch snippets of laughter in places where otherwise only fear would dare tread. Jokes about rats becoming the real landlords of the city, or playful jests about the nobles' attempts at avoiding death. Much like travellers trapped on a turbulent sea, there's a palpable sense that people cling to these superstitions, not solely to make sense of devastation, but to carve meaning in chaos. Communities forge bonds through shared narratives, weaving a collective resilience through shared trials and the solemn dance with mortality. It's a testament to the persistent spirit of humanity, one that extends beyond stark reality. Within this bizarre mélange of belief and ritual stands a deeply human tendency to reach across the veil of understanding and grasp at the threads of mystery binding this life to the next. You observe how such moments might give birth to quiet resolve, transforming confusion into courage and myth into memory. As shadows stretch across the land, some superstitions fade while others endure, echoing well beyond their time. They remain vestiges of how humans have and always will seek stories to make sense of the senseless and to plot pathways through the pitch of night, hoping to emerge intact on the farther shore. Continuing your traversal through the grips of the Black Death, you find that this era's profound impact extends well beyond its stark human cost, carving deep channels into the landscape of medieval trade and economy. Imagine yourself standing amidst the clangor and clatter of an early 14th century marketplace, where the promise of riches and prosperity once hung tangible in the balmy air. Here, in the bustling nexus of commerce, the plague casts a long shadow, disrupting not only the flow of goods, but the very framework of medieval society. Picture the bustling ports of Venice, or the sprawling trade routes that once crisscrossed Europe, linking towns and cities like veins of prosperity. With the onset of the plague, these thoroughfares transformed from arteries of wealth into conduits of an unrelenting scourge. Fleets bound with goods now carry more than spice and silk. They are unknowing carriers of the pandemic, each docked ship a spectre reminding of vulnerability cloaked in routine. As merchants and traders scurry to employ measures of containment, the market atmosphere is tinged with unease. Goods linger longer on the shelves, handled with suspicion. Prices fluctuate wildly. A bottle of vinegar or a string of garlic might fetch a small fortune. while luxury items like fine textiles wither unsold. It's as though the senses of the market have been skewed, the balance disrupted, each exchange shadowed by risk. One undeniable historical fact stands. A sharp labour shortage, born of disease decimating the working population, ushers in significant economic shifts. With fewer hands to work the fields and craft the goods, wages, once stagnant, begin to creep upward. Workers find themselves in a unique position of leverage. For the peasantry, typically relegated to the bottom rung of the social ladder, this change is both unpredictable and unprecedented. Meanwhile, you notice landlords and property owners in a conundrum, torn between the desire to maintain labour forces and the stark reality of diminished populations. Willing to negotiate out of necessity, they offer improved terms, longer leases and reduced rents. All around, the traditional feudal system, rooted in its rigid hierarchies and monolithic control, feels the tremors of transformation. But it's not all favourable shifts. Picture the expansive guild halls, once brimming with fervent artisans and craftsmen perfecting their trades. There, the collective wisdom and shared passions now find themselves on tenuous ground, as master craftsmen fall victim to the malady and apprentices are left in the lurch. Many skills and artisanal techniques, honed over generations, disappear like whispers into the void, victims of both the pandemic and its ensuing societal restructuring. The shipyards and workshops, those heartbeats of medieval industrial activity, echo with an unsettling quiet. It is a stark reminder of both the impermanence of human endeavour and the resilience that can bloom in its wake. Industries find themselves adapting or succumbing to new demands, sometimes reinventing entire trade models to cater to a populace now needing different goods and services. Historians still argue whether this period saw the birth of a more adaptable and flexible economic structure, or simply a temporary reprieve before reverting to pre-plague norms. The tentative dance of recovery is not without its quirks. You might find amusement in the whimsical methods traders use to woo wary customers back, ranging from parchment promises of plague-free goods to the curious custom of buyers being allowed to use newfangled long spoons to examine edible wares from a safe distance. This economic tempest forces a larger dialogue within communities, one where adaptation becomes a survival trait. Town councils and merchant guilds host the earliest inklings of debates on regulation and oversight, prefiguring modern economic policy in fledgling yet notable forms. Amidst the shifts and struggles, you can't help but sense the determination to forge through adversity. A tenacity sparkling with the hope of enduring beyond being mere casualties of circumstance. This era of upheaval becomes a crucible, refining societal norms and laying seeds that will grow into the mercantile systems recognizable in later epochs. As you take in this confluence of commerce and survival, the whispered stories of economic resilience weave themselves into the larger narrative. Here, in the midst of profound uncertainty, the truth emerges. The roots of human interconnectedness, both financial and personal, run deep, sustaining those who dare nurture them through the storm and into whatever may follow the dawn. As we delve deeper into the unfolding narrative of the Black Death, you find yourself amidst a scene both solemn and surreal, the arrival of the Flagellants. These fervent believers, driven by faith and a desperate fear of divine wrath, march through your town with an air of solemnity that commands attention. Dressed in long robes, their faces obscured, they move like a wave of living penance, chanting hymns and wielding leather whips against their own flesh in an act of self-mortification. Imagine standing on the sidelines, the distant murmur of their chants reverberating as a low hum through the dense cobblestone streets. The echoing sound draws people from their homes and businesses, peering cautiously from windows or gathering at a respectful distance. The Flagellants represent an extreme iteration of religious fervor, believing that their self-inflicted suffering might stave off the plague by atoning for the collective sins of humankind. These processions create a peculiar, almost hypnotic spectacle, drawing followers and detractors alike. Some watch with a sense of profound reverence, joining the march with hopes of divine intervention. Others might raise an eyebrow at the spectacle, viewing it as a misguided attempt to sway the Almighty in their favour. You might chuckle at whispered jokes. Perhaps a local tradesman quips that the plague is less likely to be swayed by leather than by practical deed. One mainstream historical fact emerges from this fervour. The Flagellant movement, while gaining substantial traction in some regions, often clashed with church authorities. In many areas, the Catholic Church viewed them with suspicion, wary of their wild practices and the potential to incite unrest. Despite the Church's attempt to curb their activities, the Flagellants blazed a path across the continent, their processions becoming emblematic of the period's complex relationship with faith. As you weave between these fervent scenes, you observe another dimension to the Flagellants' influence, their ability to unify disparate communities. In a world fractured by fear and unfamiliarity, the Flagellants offer both a sense of purpose and a shared narrative. People, in their quest for understanding amid chaos, find a strange comfort in the cyclic rhythm of the chants, the repeated motion of penance, and the shared belief that they are doing something, anything, to change their fate. Historians still debate whether the Flagellants contributed positively to communities by fostering unity and collective action, or whether they were more a reflection of hysteria and misplaced faith. For them, this movement was both a personal and collective journey, one that asked the hardest questions and sought answers under the open skies and watchful heavens. As you step back from the procession, it is clear that these acts of both defiance and devotion encapsulate the era's struggle to find balance between desperation and hope. The Flagellants' hymn-filled marches paint a haunting picture of resilience, a tangible expression of humanity's enduring desire to seek redemption and understanding in the face of overwhelming adversity. Onlookers might take inspiration from these displays, seeing reflection not just of spiritual desperation, but of human tenacity. They find lessons within the emotional echoes, interwoven with the era's broader tapestry of survival. A reminder that even in the depths of despair, the human spirit reaches out, resonating with warmth amidst the cold reality of the plague. The Flagellants eventually fade from prominence, their chants and penance giving way to new forms of religious expression and interpretation. But their legacy lingers well beyond the wash of their processions. Remembering how fervor and belief influenced both the present struggles and the future's foundation serves as a poignant reminder that from even the darkest epochs, humanity derives wisdom, forging anew through resilience and faith. In witnessing such deeply personal acts that reflect a communal will, you leave with a clearer understanding of the intrinsic links between faith, survival, and the ceaseless pursuit of meaning. All around, the echoes of the Flagellants continue to weave through the shadows of memory, a testament to faith's enduring presence in the human narrative, even amidst the devastation of the Black Death. Moving through the uneven path of history, you find yourself drawn into the realm of medieval art and literature, a vibrant canvas reflecting the age's tumultuous relationship with life and death, particularly under the shadow of the Black Death. As you wander through this transformation of cultural expression, you can almost feel the pulse of a world grappling with its own mortality, as artists and writers strive to capture the essence of an existence suddenly rendered fragile and unpredictable. Imagine stepping into the candlelit studio of a painter, the air thick with the scent of oils and canvas. Before you, a tableau of macabre yet revealing imagery unfolds. The artist, with furrowed brow, captures the presence of death not as a distant abstraction, but as a familiar companion. The dance of death, or dance macabre, becomes a powerful motif in art, a skeletal figure leading the living in a macabre procession. It's a stark reminder of life's impermanence and nature's indifference to status or wealth. Mainstream historical fact: the Black Death serves as a catalyst for such artistic expressions, allowing mortality to seep into the cultural consciousness. This period witnesses an explosion of creativity, prompted by a profound awareness of life's fleeting nature. Art becomes not just a reflection, but a reaction, an exploration of the unknown and an acceptance of life's limitations. Simultaneously, literature during this time undergoes a similar metamorphosis. In dimly lit chambers, scribes bend over parchment, their quills scratching furiously as they document both the horrors and the heroics of their age. Works like Giovanni Boccaccio's The Decameron emerge a collection of tales told by young people seeking refuge from the plague. Through humour, honesty and horror, Boccaccio offers a window into the resilience and absurdities of human nature, crafting stories that resonate with undertones of hope amidst despair. The realm of literature becomes a space where experience is shared, a sanctuary where people find solace in knowing they are not alone in their fears and hopes. Writers weave narratives that speak to both the collective memory of suffering and the indomitable spirit that arises in the face of adversity. While the overarching themes of mortality and despair loom large, it's important to remember the lighter notes threaded through these creations. Artists do not shy away from infusing their pieces with humour, a sardonic laugh in the face of fate. You catch sight of this wit in carvings on cathedral friezes and marginalia in illuminated manuscripts, where playful demons or grimacing skulls mock the gravity of their situation, reminding all that laughter is a balm for the soul. Amongst these influential works, prevailing narratives challenge simplistic interpretations of the plague's effects. Historians still argue whether this creative outpouring was a reflection of societal breakdown or a crucial enterprise in conceptualizing new societal norms. What is beyond dispute is the role that such art and literature play, not just in coping with crisis, but in leaving a legacy for future generations, a timeless testament of human resilience. As you peruse this gallery of medieval creation, it becomes a vivid tapestry alive with both pain and passion. You note with interest the blending of religious and secular themes, united under the common theme of life's fragility. These works encourage viewers and readers alike to accept their vulnerabilities while celebrating moments of grace and grit. In these transformative creations, colour and narrative interweave, casting both shadows and illumination, proof of a culture determined to find expression beyond the confines of fear. The art and literature of the time reveal profound insights into resilience and reflection, illustrating how a world enshrouded in darkness dares to reimagine and redefine its landscape. Our explorations of this rich era of creativity lead us to a clearer understanding of how society copes with upheaval, emerging with renewed vigour and a deeper appreciation for life's ephemeral beauty. Through the brushstrokes of a painter or the words of a scribe, lessons of endurance persist, enriching the collective story of humanity and serving as enduring reminders that, even in the darkest times, beauty and hope find their place. As you turn your gaze to the inadvertent yet notable role animals played during the Black Death, you find yourself amidst a curious tapestry where humans and creatures are inexorably linked in a shared survival saga. Picture the medieval streets of Europe, bustling not just with people but also countless animals, essential, omnipresent companions in daily life, yet potentially complicit in the spread of the pandemic. This interwoven existence highlights a complex dynamic between humans and animals during this turbulent era. The towns and countryside teem with life, where animals function as workers, companions, and, unknowingly, carriers. Rats, with their beady eyes and twitching whiskers, emerge as memorable villains in this narrative. Known now as vectors for the fleas carrying Yersinia pestis, these creatures scuttle between dockyards, markets, and tightly packed alleyways, their presence both ubiquitous and ominous. The rapid multiplication of rats and consequent spread of the plague introduces a challenge no one at that time fully comprehends. Imagine yourself standing at the edge of a busy port, observing crates being unloaded from a ship. Amidst the bustle of labour, an unnoticed rat slips from the ropes, blending seamlessly into the shadows. Here, it is easy to visualize how such small creatures could infiltrate communities, sowing fear and confusion as the plague proliferates. Their mere sight becomes an omen of misfortune, associated with disease and decay. Interestingly, historians still argue about the primary culpability of these rodents, debating whether it was actually the human flea or other agents that played significant roles in spreading the disease. Nevertheless, the perception of rats as harbingers of disease resonates powerfully in collective memory, colouring future tales and myths. Complementing this fraught relationship with rats is the medieval man's connection with domestic animals. Cats and dogs, sheep and oxen, all deeply entrenched in the fabric of daily life. Cats, caught between roles as pest controllers and potential scapegoats, encounter varying fates during this period. Some communities embrace them as allies in combating rodent infestations, while others, steeped in suspicion, associate them too closely with witchcraft and ill luck. This period also observes unexpected animal phenomena as alternate practices emerge in desperate bids for protection. Superstitions see livestock treated as mystical buffers against misfortune. For instance, you might hear tales of villagers housing their livestock near or even beneath their living quarters, mirroring a belief that these beasts could somehow form a barrier against the malevolent forces of disease. A strange juxtaposition, perhaps, yet it highlights how entwined survival tactics are with both superstition and practicality. As the pandemic unfolds, animals as much as humans find themselves in the crosshairs of evolving societal norms and decisions. The economic necessity of certain animals, juxtaposed with the threat posed by others, forces townsfolk and farmers to reconsider long-held practices. The impact is significant. For these creatures, vital to the agrarian economy and fabric of medieval life, come to bear immense symbolic weight. Yet another quirky tidbit emerges. Amidst the chaos, songs and folklore often include references to animals, crafting a narrative tapestry that reels curious listeners back to a time when creatures bracketing human struggles helped shape collective imagination. Even in times of dire adversity, people find ways to fold everyday presence into celebrations, remembrances, and cautionary tales. In considering the dense network that binds humans and animals during the Black Death, you will find a reflection of resilience and adaptation, a testament to life past and present. It becomes evident that, despite, or perhaps because of circumstances, both man and beast are protagonists in this winding narrative, not just surviving within it, but actively defining its arc. Through this lens, the story of the Black Death sees humanity grappling with the natural world, forging a renewed understanding that echoes far beyond those troubled medieval years, underscoring a shared existence that persists through today and into future societies. In closing this exploration, the intricate connection between creatures great and small, and their interplay with human endeavours, forms a compelling chapter in this saga of resilience and survival, the bond of life's interconnected tale. As you traverse further into the story of survival during the Black Death, you come across an intriguing strategy that becomes crucial for many: the quest for isolation. In a world grappling with an invisible and deadly threat, isolation represents both a physical and an emotional cornerstone of survival for those who can afford such a luxury. Picture yourself on a mist-shrouded hillside, overlooking an imposing manor or a secluded monastery. These bastions of relative safety, fortified in both assets and influence, become refuges from the plague. Those with the means retreat to country estates, locking themselves away from the infected throngs of the cities, attempting to hold the plague at bay with distance. Isolation in this context is a multifaceted tool. It's not merely the act of living apart from densely packed city streets, but a concerted effort to reorganize lives around the core principle of prevention. Upper-class families seclude themselves, adopting rigorous routines where only select individuals come and go, bringing necessary provisions and news from the outside world. You can almost feel the tension in these isolated retreats, an underlying anxiety coupled with forced innovation, as these households adapt to an unprecedented absence from societal engagement. Even within city bounds, the concept of isolation takes root. Some residents, lacking the resources to escape, barricade themselves into their homes, warding off strangers and track-laden footsteps. While the roofs above their heads are made of sturdy timber and thatch, it is simple hope that fortifies their walls. Historians will tell you that the integration of isolation into daily existence fostered a unique brand of community, one characterized by both the fierce protection of loved ones and the quiet severing of social ties. Births, deaths, marriages, and celebrations become intimate affairs, acknowledged in whispers or soft candlelight rituals rather than public gatherings. The desire to isolate both physically and emotionally creates ripples through societal norms, altering personal relationships and communication. Letters and messages of hope or distress weave through these uncertain days like threads linking disparate worlds, physical separation serving to tighten emotional bonds. In some corners, love stories transcend barricades and borders, illustrating how human connection ekes through those imposed distances. A nod to resilience even in enforced solitude. Reflecting on this historical phenomenon, you notice parallels with contemporary times, where digital technology now offers the luxury of connection at a distance. Whereas medieval communities crafted resilience through letters and gestures, today's societies weave their networks through screens and waves, showing that at heart people adaptively strive for connection despite the odds. In the heart of urban centres, ambitious entrepreneurs devise a rudimentary form of delivery services, a quirky yet necessary response to the realities of sequestered living. You might smile thinking of these early essential workers, journeying with supplies in hand, pioneers of a practice that persists into modernity. Yet, isolation is not an equal opportunity strategy. The lower classes find themselves tethered to necessity, their livelihoods holding them close to epicenters of crisis. Navigating this particularly fraught existence, they improvise defenses, from adopting superstitions like charms and amulets to intense personal hygiene regimens that verge on ritualistic, each both a practical measure and a talisman against despair. Amid the tension of separation, you witness fascinating community adaptations, with smaller villages sharing resources and assistance, springboards of neighbourly kindness bolstered by necessity. These acts embody a different form of containment, highlighting how, even isolated, people find ways to support one another. Imagine floating above this fractured landscape, seeing not despair but ingenuity and tenacity. Whether within the ramparts of an estate or the confines of a humble dwelling, an ecosystem of coping mechanisms flourishes, an illustration of life pursuing balance against odds. In examining how isolation became a strategy during the Black Death, you glean insights into humanity's persistent spirit, a world shaped by constraints yet illuminated by collective resolve. This narrative, turning isolation into a tool rather than a sentence, carves out lessons of human adaptability and creativity that echo into the present, underscoring the perpetual dance between distance and togetherness in the face of adversity. Venturing further along the landscape of the Black Death, your journey takes you across various regions of Europe, where the plague's impact and the responses it incites vary markedly. Each locale provides a distinct narrative, influenced by unique cultural, political, and geographic factors. As you traverse from the bustling streets of Paris to the sprawling corridors of Constantinople, the tapestry of survival is woven with threads as diverse as the people who populate these lands. In France, the churning of everyday life slows to a precarious trickle. Paris, the city of lights in the making, finds its luminosity dimmed by the pestilence that creeps through its arrondissements. Authorities scramble to implement health ordinances and manage the mounting burial needs, with public pits becoming resting places for those claimed by the malady. You can imagine the city's Gothic spires standing watch over a populace struggling to maintain order amidst chaos. Across the Channel, in England, the situation is similarly dire. London, with its characteristic narrow streets and bustling docks, becomes a particularly fertile ground for the spreading of disease. The government imposes quarantines, blocking entry to infected travellers, a grim but necessary attempt to stem the tide. The English countryside, with its checkered pastures, serves as both refuge and battleground. The rural landscape provides isolation, but it's a tenuous sanctuary, reliant on maintaining strict controls over human contact. As you move eastward, the Italian city-states, each a vibrant node in the web of Mediterranean trade, face their own set of challenges. Venice and Genoa, maritime hubs closely linked by their thriving commerce, form frontline defences against the plague. The ports impose rigorous quarantine measures, detaining ships at anchor for weeks, a strategy borrowed from Dubrovnik's earlier attempts to safeguard its citizens. Here you see a poignant struggle between maintaining the lifeblood of trade and safeguarding the lives of city dwellers. Historians still debate whether the Italian response was the most effective during the pandemic, as these cities' robust health ordinances might have saved some, but failed others. What remains clear is that the legacy of these early public health interventions echoes through subsequent centuries, setting the stage for future systems. In Spain, the fervor of religious devotion intensifies amidst the chaos. The Spanish towns and hinterlands witness heightened ecclesiastical influence, with fervent processions and prayers a common occurrence. The rhythm of life, underpinned by deep-seated beliefs in divine intervention, remains as much a subject of tradition. Through this lens, you see desperation transmuted into devotion, carving pathways of solace amid despair. Venture towards Central Europe, and the story becomes even more fragmented. Germany, a patchwork of principalities with diverse leadership, presents a mosaic of responses. Some regions experience harsh, sometimes draconian measures focusing on containment, while others demonstrate a curious intermingling of acceptance and resignation, philosophies uniquely sculpted by local customs and traditions. Now, continue east, and Constantinople unfolds before you, an ancient city straddling the confluence of cultures and continents, situated at a pivotal trade hub. Nestled within its walls, the Byzantine heart beats steadily, even as the pandemic gnaws at its fringes. Its strategic location brings both vulnerability and strategic advantages. Merchants and pilgrims are still drawn to its markets even as the city grapples with the fluctuating tides of infection. Faced with the common enemy of the plague, narratives entwine with those of the past, revealing adaptations uniquely suited to each region's geography and culture. Across all of Europe, a certain ingenuity emerges amidst the tragedy, a kind of renaissance before the Renaissance. Innovations in public health, shifts in economic focus, and efforts to reform and restructure society, pressing outward from necessity's forge. As you trace these deliberate advances from region to region, you note how some places enact mimicry born from observation, while others strike out with pioneering approaches, each an attempt to ward off previously inconceivable threats with creative pragmatism. It's testament to the fabric of human resilience, proving that even when disparate methods weave through history, survival is not one-size-fits-all, but rather an echo of diverse determination. The multiplicity of these regional responses to the Black Death offers insight into the human instinct to survive. A kaleidoscope of resolve and resourcefulness mirrors a Europe redefining itself amid unimaginable hardship. Hand in hand, these storied paths paint a picture of collective endurance, where each experience becomes a page in the grand tome of history, a narrative of perseverance and renewal in the shadow of catastrophe. Turning your attention to the indomitable human spirit during the Black Death, you witness an extraordinary tapestry woven not only with threads of despair, but with resilience and ingenuity. As societies grapple with the calamity enveloping them, individuals and communities find pockets of strength and creativity to continue living, adapting to the new, harsh realities the pandemic imposes. Imagine yourself in a small village nestled in the lush valleys of France. Here, life beats to the rhythm of the earth, the land dictating the terms of survival. Families, often entire generations under one wooden roof, learn to navigate the chilling devastation with unity and resourcefulness. Mutual aid becomes the lingua franca of survival, with neighbours pooling resources and labour to tend to fields left barren from the loss of life. They share harvests, exchange goods, and shoulder the burden of loss together. Grain stored in communal barns offer security against the uncertainty looming on the horizon. In urban centres, resourcefulness manifests differently. Society's heart pulses with commerce, and social networks strained by the relentless onslaught of disease. Yet, even amidst this turmoil, sparks of ingenuity ignite in the shadows. Artisans, faced with labour shortages and dwindling markets, pioneer new techniques to sustain their trades. They experiment with materials and methods, adapting to the economic shift, the necessity of innovation catalysing what would later become steps toward modernisation. Despite the leaden shroud of fear, social gatherings morph into opportunities for connection and solidarity, albeit transformed. With public spaces empty or repurposed for healthcare responses, individuals find solace in smaller circles, where music and storytelling offer both distraction and comfort. You hear the soft strains of a lute echoing from an open window, or the wistful notes of a harp carrying across a courtyard, transforming pockets of time into precious interludes of normalcy. Historians point to these resilient endeavours as early indicators of changing societal dynamics. The communal emphasis and mutual dependence reflect evolving paradigms in social contract and responsibility, seeds planted in adversity that would bear fruit in the centuries to come. One quirky tidbit highlights the strength of the human spirit. Festive costumes become a surprising symbol of defiance. In some villages, colourful masks, not unlike modern-day masquerade attire, offer both protection and identity, a playful barrier against disease and a testament to life's continuity. This nod to joy within desolation mirrors the enduring desire to celebrate humanity even amidst profound disarray. A palpable sense of perseverance underscores these communities' actions. Young people assume roles once filled by the old, learning trades by necessity or inheriting family responsibilities overnight. The education of practical skills becomes a rite of passage, fostering a new generation molded as much by resilience as by tradition. This adaptability reveals itself in the layers of reconstructed family units extending not just by blood but by necessity and circumstance. And as you wander through these living tapestries, witness the unforeseen from hardship, the emergence of strong community leaders, inspired by crisis to intervene and support. Some rise from humble roots, others from an established system, but what unites them is a commitment to galvanizing their neighbors, reinforcing alliances in the face of upheaval. These local patriots, often unbeknownst to themselves, are crafting templates for leadership tempered by empathy and practicality, qualities that would sift through the ages, reshaping notions of governance and association. As dusk settles over the landscapes of Europe, with the ever-watchful play remaining a formidable force, you observe from the twilight how light persists, not the searing brilliance of immediate triumph, but the steadfast gleam of persistence, including love, laughter, and the enduring will to endure and adapt. The human spirit, indefatigable in its quest for survival, reflects a mosaic of both innovation and tradition. It weaves a meaningful legacy from the fraying threads of hardship, painting a picture of hope born from darkness. This intricate dance with destiny, forming the backbone of resilience, confirms that when humanity is tested, it often emerges with a narrative enriched by the complexities of its perseverance. This observation of resilience and innovation, from intimate gatherings to the symphony of daily life's rhythms, serves as a poignant reminder of the vibrancy of the human condition, a testimony to endurance not just as a reaction, but as a lived, enduring art. As you continue your exploration of Europe during the Black Death, a fascinating aspect of resilience emerges through the changes in architecture, both in response to necessity and as a testament to enduring ingenuity. In this period, marked by upheaval, constructions and redesigns reflect a shifting mindset and the scarred memory of survival. Imagine standing amidst the skeletal remains of what was once a bustling town square, where empty foundations and shattered facades serve as somber reminders of lives lost. Yet amid the ruin lies the promise of renewal. Artisans and builders, those who remain, begin to harness their creativity, blending caution with innovation to recreate spaces once saturated with life, but now echoing with opportunity. In the dense urban quarters, redesigned buildings emerge, incorporating new approaches to space and function. Early architectural adaptations are characterized by larger windows and open courtyards, maximizing ventilation, an element unwittingly linked to health, given the plague's association with stale, confined air. These measures, though simple, display an admirable nod toward practicality, exhibiting an emerging awareness of environment and well-being. You can imagine the construction, a cacophony of chisels and hammers, as fresh stones and timbers replace the old. Much like a phoenix rising from ashes, this architectural rebirth seeks to preserve the resilience of communities while embracing a brighter future. Scarlet-robed masons and labourers, heavily cloaked, toil relentlessly under sun and shadow to fashion tiers of new dwellings, emphasizing durability and life-sustaining spaces. Historians view this architectural shift as more than a response to crisis. It marks a subtle yet significant transition towards newer design aesthetics that embrace both function and form. Churches and towers, too, see renovations and expansions, their roles as spiritual anchors augmented by their symbolic strength. People find solace in these familiar yet forward-looking havens, where spirituality and community coalesce within strengthened walls and archways. Even in rural settings, the landscape reflects adaptation to the demands of the age. Farmhouses transform from simple living quarters to fortified homes, with added structures to safeguard livestock and provisions. Some witness the emergence of manorial estates, crafted as defenders against encroaching plague. Increnellated walls and small keeps becoming emblematic of both seclusion and safety. A quirky but insightful tidbit comes from the makeshift memorials cropping up across Europe, commemorating the departed not solely through words, but through unique structures. Stone crosses erected by roadways, perhaps, or wooden chapels defiantly spurning decay. These small tokens bear testament to a society confronting change, but steadfastly rooted in respect and remembrance. The architectural response extends beyond new constructions. It influences societal roles and relationships. Those skilled in craft and design find themselves in high demand as cities begin their physical resurrection. Exploiting a deficit of skilled labor creates intriguing dynamics, even leading some to break free from traditional guild constraints, a glimmer of economic transformation. Curiously, the interweaving of imagination with grave necessity reveals itself in unexpected design features. Defensive elements from castle battlements make their way into urban architecture, corners fortified with watchtowers, and courtyards with concealed storage for essentials, creating a fortress-like resilience nestled within communities. In witnessing these developments, it's apparent how adaptability and pragmatism blend with enduring values. The transformations of space and structure are reflections of broader shifts that echo the evolving priorities of a world inching toward recovery. A legacy that endures in stone and timber, whispering to us from across epochs. As you navigate these streets and spaces, whether preserved or rebuilt, consider the narrative of adaptive resilience they encapsulate. Lessons in reimagining space, balancing tradition with the demands of adversity, continue to resonate today, informing a collective humanity transitioning through trials. Through this architectural lens, the resilience of communities is etched in the bones of the earth, a reminder and an inspiration that even amidst the darkest hours, human ingenuity can forge not just responses, but masterpieces, crafting a thoughtfully reshaped world from the crucible of survival. As you delve deeper into the annals of the past, the story of how the Black Death compelled societies to reach into the fledgling science of their time unfolds. The attempt to understand a disease of such unrelenting force nudges human curiosity and intellect toward the early forms of scientific inquiry, albeit interwoven with the superstitions and beliefs of the age. Imagine yourself in a dimly lit chamber, a place that serves as both a healer's sanctuary and a rudimentary laboratory. Here, herbalists, physicians, and scholars, each a custodian of the ancient knowledge of herbs and humours, gather to ponder the nature of this invisible threat. Their tools are rudimentary by modern standards: mortar and pestle, rudimentary distillation apparatus, and texts penned with ancient wisdom yet often clouded by law. The prevailing theory of miasma, the belief that disease spreads through bad air, directs much of the early attempts at scientific investigation. You watch as apothecaries concoct fragrant potions and potpourri like incense intended to cleanse the air. This historical fact provides a glimpse into the intersection of science and survival, though shackled by the limitations of contemporary understanding. A fascinating aspect of this pursuit is the burgeoning interest in astrology and alchemy, disciplines that, in medieval Europe, embody the quest for knowledge and mastery over nature. Astrological charts are studied with an intensity that hopes to reveal patterns, proponents believing the stars might hold answers missed by human eyes. Alchemists, with their mystical allure, seek to transform the base into the sublime, not just to transmute metals but to elevate human spirit and health. Historians still argue about the degree to which astrology wielded genuine scientific value versus serving as a comforting narrative amidst uncertainty. However, it is clear that these early scientific explorations were precursors to more rigorous methodologies that will eventually unravel biological mysteries. In the silent halls of remote monasteries, monks meticulously copy and translate medical texts, preserving knowledge while occasionally daring to pen original ideas. Here, you listen to the scratching of quills on parchment, capturing not only the wisdom of past ages, but hints of nascent understanding, a subtle, steady acquisition of insights amidst prevailing shadows. As desperation grows, so too do experiments with new methods of treatment. Herbalists gather plants, roots, and whatever the earth may yield, meticulously experimenting with concoctions beyond traditional remedies. You find these pioneers not unlike modern researchers, observing effects, noting ailments eased or intensified by each preparation. Beyond the smoke and incense, newfound disciplines in anatomy begin to solidify, laying the groundwork for an unexpected evolution: medical progress. In this fascinating mix of trial, error, and occasional breakthrough, intriguing innovations emerge. Quarantine, germ theory in its crudest form, finds support not through empirical data but through observed outcomes. Sanitation advances while rudimentary, as new architectural and urban planning ideals echo an intuitive grasp of contagion's dynamics. Quirky tidbit: in certain quarters the belief that music and good cheer might fend off the pestilence leads to elaborate gatherings, arguably unethical but an unconsciously therapeutic human response to bypass despair. From this eclectic landscape of burgeoning science, you note steps leading cautiously toward the empirical methodologies that will flourish in subsequent centuries. As night descends upon these medieval streets, stars twinkling overhead, they become a metaphor for curiosity's spark, offering glimpses of revelation amid the vast unknown. From this cradle of scientific endeavour, a convergence of myth, observation, and fleeting clarity emerge. Foundations upon which future generations shall build. The profound desire to make sense of the world and secure its fragility leads not just to survival in dire times, but to the birth of intellectual frontiers that expand the realm of human possibility. In documenting this tentative dance with discovery, you witness humanity poised at the brink of awakening. These early attempts, though interlaced with myth, propel society forward, sculpting narratives that juxtapose resilience with evolution, continuing to inspire the inquiry that propels us into ever-new vistas of understanding. As the Black Death's shadow looms over medieval life, you discover an interesting paradox. Amidst the pervasive despair, people turn to humour and music as forms of defiance and resilience. In the face of adversity that could easily overwhelm the spirit, these creative expressions emerge as a crucial form of catharsis and continuity. Imagine yourself in a small, candlelit tavern, the air buzzing with the subdued hum of patrons seeking refuge from the bleakness outside. Here, in the flickering glow, jesters and minstrels unleash their craft, an alchemical blend of humour, satire and melody that momentarily lifts the burden weighing heavily on hearts and minds. The laughter, sparked by bawdy jokes and clever wordplay, becomes its own form of resistance, a shared refuge against the pervasive dread. These jesters use their wit to illuminate the absurdities of both high and low stations, finding comic relief even in a world turned upside down. As you listen to their tales, you realize even the gravest circumstances cannot completely stifle the human ability to find levity. Scholars later suggest that this humor serves as a psychological balm, underscoring the indomitable human spirit's need to assert life in the face of mortality. Even remnants of humor from this period reach across time, reminders of resilience that can cut through despair with the sharp edge of laughter. Beyond the humor, music seeps into the fabric of everyday existence. Street corners, markets, and public squares become stages for minstrels and musicians, whose melodies, both rousing and melancholic, offer company to those who will listen. Imagine the plaintive tune of a lute, the gentle harmonies of voices raised in song, each note a testament to endurance, a comfort woven from sorrow. These songs do more than soften the day's harshness. They capture the era's ethos in lyrical form, an oral history sung from town to town. Each melody resonates with familiarity, echoing through corridors and courtyards as reminders of a shared struggle, binding communities with strings of sound in an unstinting expression of solidarity. It's a quirky tidbit to note that some of the era's darker forms of humour and song initially shock, only to resonate with a profound sense of shared experience. This blend of sarcasm, gallows humour, and heartfelt ballad reflect a world searching for meaning and connection amidst chaos. In sharing these experiences, communities forge an unspoken covenant of survival through art and melody. Historians view this cultural phenomenon as both a reflection and catalyst of change, with music and humour acting as vehicles for conveying social commentary and preserving memory. Through satire, people critique societal norms and injustices, using humour as both shield and weapon. This artistry, though bred of necessity, becomes a precursor to more formal forms of artistic expression that will blossom in future cultural renaissances. Amidst these scenes, you glean how music and humour come to embody a paradoxical legacy, a testament to both the enduring fragility and strength of the human spirit. As the sounds of laughter and music linger in the air, they hint at a world striving toward healing, echoing hope, and sowing seeds of renewal amidst devastation. In observing these expressions, you're reminded that life, even on the brink of despair, finds exuberance through creation. It's a necessary act of defiance, a celebration rooted not in naivete, but in profound understanding. Humanity finds ways to heal by transcending suffering with creativity, gathering its fragments to craft stories and songs that chart the contour from shadow to light. Through humour and music, the medieval people of this era illustrate a form of survival that's both deeply personal and universally resonant. The legacy of laughter and song endures beyond the era, echoing through time as poignant reminders of resilience, adaptation, and the unyielding persistence of joy amidst sorrow. As you tread further into the story of the Black Death, the role of governing bodies stands out vividly. Governments across Europe grapple with an unprecedented crisis, striving to manage public health amidst the chaos. It's a time when inadequacies often come to the forefront, as authorities are both overwhelmed by the challenges and spurred to innovate within the confines of their knowledge. Imagine yourself in a bustling city hall, where the hurried scrawl of quills across parchment competes with the anxious murmur of officials. This is where strategies are conceived and enacted, albeit sometimes haphazardly, in an attempt to navigate a community well beyond the brink of disaster. The urgency is palpable, an all-consuming effort to devise methods of control that might yet steer society through the storm. In cities like Venice, Florence, and Paris, public health ordinances become both shield and spear in the fight against the plague. Quarantine measures, born of desperation, are deployed with increasing rigour, often mandating that ships and caravans quarantine outside city limits for weeks at a time. It's a bold, albeit imperfect, early attempt at epidemic management, illustrating how necessity drives these municipalities to invent precedents in crisis response. In contrast, some regions suffer from confusing or contradictory directives. Government attempts to manage human desperation are stymied by a lack of coherent strategic planning, resulting in further chaos among citizens already teetering on the edge. Where leadership falters, communities either creatively devise their own systems or spiral into disorder, highlighting a grim reliance on regional governance for stabilization. One mainstream historical fact is manifested in the establishment of plague hospitals, known as lazarettos, named after Saint Lazarus, the patron saint of lepers. These facilities represent significant strides towards institutional medicalized response, although inequality in access and quality of care casts a long shadow. Governed by a patchwork of religious orders and civic administrators, these institutions vary widely in efficacy, a testament to good intentions challenged by limited medical knowledge. Historians continue to debate the effectiveness of governmental responses, whether they reflect budding public health initiatives or chaotic footnotes in history. What becomes apparent is that these efforts mark early steps towards structured governance in health crises, with municipal responses capturing both triumphs and failures in their execution. An intriguing aspect of these governmental attempts includes efforts to maintain economic stability amidst the upheaval. From controlling wages to attempting price freezes on basic commodities, officials grasp at economic levers, sometimes with unexpected outcomes. The black market thrives in the shadows as resourceful individuals circumvent controls, an early nod to market dynamics persisting regardless of external impositions. Meanwhile, the complexity of interpersonal interactions with officials comes to life on the streets. Government decrees bring unexpected shifts, a change in curfews, stipulations on gatherings, or compulsory reporting of illness. Tension ripples as state imposition conflicts with individual freedoms, setting the stage for debates on privacy versus public safety. People ahead of their time begin to wrestle with autonomy under state scrutiny, a struggle that echoes in subsequent centuries. Amidst efforts, both well-meaning and misguided, rises the silhouette of hope built on collaboration. Local councils hold rudimentary assemblies with citizens, courageous volunteers patrol city streets, and protective vigilance becomes the hallmark of those who must balance authority with empathy. As you look deeper into the various responses, you come to recognize an emerging awareness and growth from crisis management. While fraught with inefficiencies, the flaws reveal resilience in governance too, as systems adaptively evolve through hindsight and hard lessons learned, the seedbed, potentially, of modern governance strategies. From the vantage of history, one can see how these governmental endeavors to confront the plague are both a reflection of their time and a stepping stone toward a future invested in public health and civic resilience. Even amidst the fragmentation and uncertainty, a certain nobility persists in these attempts, a testament to the resolve to steer society through uncharted waters even when the tides threaten to overwhelm. In examining both the individual and communal responses to the Black Death through the prism of governance, you're reminded of broader narratives of resilience and change. The role of government in public health, though marred by challenges, illuminates the human drive to seek stable footing on the shifting sands of crisis, an undertaking where past, present, and future inevitably intertwine. As you shift your focus toward the evolving medical profession during the era of the Black Death, you uncover a fascinating narrative of transformation. It's an epoch that witnesses not only the limitations of medical knowledge, but also the relentless pursuit of understanding and mastery of the human body amidst one of history's most devastating pandemics. Imagine yourself standing in a small apothecary, its shelves lined with jars of roots, herbs, and tinctures, each a testament to the hope that persists even when understanding seems elusive. The air is thick with the smell of camphor and rosemary, substances believed to purge ill humours and cleanse the air. Here is where the medical practitioners of the time, though largely ill-equipped to combat such a formidable foe, lay down the earliest groundwork for changes in medical practice. The physicians, surgeons, and barber surgeons of the age face a daunting task. They endeavour to understand the mysterious ailment, often relying on an eclectic mix of ancient texts and contemporary folk remedies. The reliance on the theory of the four humours remains, an enduring yet flawed paradigm wherein illness results from imbalances in bodily fluids. Bloodletting, purges, and herbal concoctions become staple interventions, imbued with both hopeful promise and frequent futility. Despite the significant challenges, this period births a remarkable inclination towards innovation. Some forward-thinking individuals begin to question established norms, allowing curiosity to breach the barriers of tradition. Autopsies, despite their taboo nature, tentatively become more frequent in certain regions, shedding light on the anatomical structure, fostering an evolving understanding of the body that would echo powerfully in future medical spheres. These times also spotlight the role of women, who often serve as healers within communities, their knowledge rooted in herbal lore and midwifery passed down through generations. In countless villages and towns, their contributions stand as critical bastions of care amidst the widespread absence of official medical intervention. While discrimination limits their participation in formal medicine, their influence permeates practices, and one can see their legacy in the nurturing of knowledge that ultimately contributes to the broader tapestry of medical advancement. Historians still debate the extent of the Black Death's influence as a catalyst for medical reformation. Did the enormity of the crisis drive practitioners toward empirical methodologies, helping nudge society toward modern scientific principles? Or did it merely provide a temporary flash of awareness amid chaos? The truth likely mingles within both realms, marked by fragments retrievable in the texts and treatises produced during this tumultuous epoch. Cast away amid the despair is the evolution of medical institutions, an intriguing element of this narrative. The establishment of medical faculties at universities sees bolstered interest as students, scholars, and practitioners seek answers within their hallowed halls. These early centers of learning serve as crucibles of discussions and debates, paving pathways to structured medical pedagogy, which would increasingly focus on observational and experience-driven inquiry. A quirky yet noteworthy tidbit emerges from the era: the rise of the plague doctor archetype. These individuals, with their iconic beaked masks, represent the alliance of medicine with perceived control over illness, however tenuous their strategies. Serving as both comforting presence and forebear of superstition, their efforts reveal the desperation and determination shared by all who wish to gain the upper hand over nature's relentless scourge. As you step back to observe the cumulative energy driving these changes, it becomes evident that the Black Death, while dark and tragic, also serves as a watershed moment in the intellectual pursuit of healthcare. It heightens the need for organized approaches and instills a hunger for knowledge, concepts whose ripples will extend well into the Renaissance and beyond. In these tentative steps toward enlightenment, a narrative emerges that complements the larger human journey. The essence of the medieval medical profession during the Black Death forms a lens through which we glimpse resilience, not only in survival, but in the cultivation of understanding, the repeated attempt to pierce the veil of the unknown. This chronicle of medical endeavor, from the scent of herbs in apothecaries to the hushed discussions in university chambers, weaves through the tapestry of human history. It speaks to humanity's continued quest to decipher and heal, laying foundations for the world you now know, and testament to the slivers of hope emerging even amidst the darkest canopies of the past. As the narrative of the Black Death unfolds, a captivating account emerges of how gender roles and societal norms shift dramatically during this period, revealing the nuanced interplay of necessity, resilience, and opportunity. The grip of the pandemic does not discriminate by gender, and the monumental loss of life impacts the fabric of society, challenging traditional roles and expectations. Imagine yourself in a medieval village where the demographics are radically altered. With the loss of male family members and labourers, women find themselves in roles previously reserved for men, stepping into spaces as heads of households, managing farms and businesses with renewed agency. This unavoidable expansion of responsibilities carves out a temporary yet profound recalibration of gender dynamics. Within homes, women become conduits of survival, responsible for feeding, healing, and nurturing their families. Their knowledge of herbal remedies and midwifery is sought with an intensity that elevates their status within communities. You can almost hear the whispered consultations between wise women and neighbours, hushed yet laden with the comforting weight of experience and knowledge. In urban centres, the absence of traders, artisans, and merchants creates vacancies that women occasionally fill, becoming skilled in commerce and trade. Their deft handling of supplies and sales helps stabilize markets in turmoil. Women managing businesses, once an anomaly, begin to emerge more frequently, adding new strands to the tapestry of economic participation. Yet, while adapting to evolving roles, women can currently face heightened vulnerabilities, With fewer protections in place and a legal framework largely dismissive of their rights, they navigate an uncertain landscape filled with both newfound opportunities and persistent limitations. The contrast between growth and constraint is stark yet propelling. On another front, the work of women in convents shines brightly. Women of the cloth, already healers and caretakers, expand their purviews, reflecting an enduring dedication to spiritual and physical well-being. Convent grounds become centers for both healing and education, imbuing efforts with purpose born of faith. Here, women's labor and influence grow, their contributions woven into the broader narrative of resilience. Amidst this recalibration, emerging discourses reflect an intriguing intersection of circumstances. Historians still debate the lasting effects of these shifts. Did the alterations seen during the plague years lay groundwork for societal transformation, or were they merely temporary adaptations that dissipated once the immediate crisis waned? The shadows of these questions, unanswered, stir as tantalizing whispers from epochs past. Curiously, certain folklore and myths from this era reflect the evolving landscape, portraying heroines not just as nurturing archetypes, but as resilient figures embodying courage and strength. Songs and tales pass from hearth to hearth, carrying reflections of changing perceptions, mingling reality with narrative imagination. It's a gentle transformation in how stories view and value womanhood, even amidst the otherwise patriarchal veneer of the time. In surveying the landscape, it's clear that these developments alter the course of gender dynamics, planting seeds of change. Women's contributions, while sometimes unsung, shape communities with threads of perseverance, boldness, and adaptability. A hidden resilience manifest amidst upheaval. And as you find yourself at this junction, between vaulted cathedrals and bustling marketplaces, you feel the pull of timeless questions around gender equality. How does society best balance roles, optimize opportunities, and harness the incredible potential residing within each individual? As these echoes resonate, it is clear the journey continues, not only on the parchment of history, but as an unrelenting motif woven through contemporary lives. In watching women navigate and redefine roles amid the Black Death, you're reminded of humanity's myriad paths, tracing distinct arcs through time, from necessity to the overarching quest for equity. Through persistence and fortitude, women contribute to the evolving narrative of survival, painting it vibrant and resilient, reinforcing the broader tapestry of endurance that shines through history. As you delve into the depths of how the Black Death affected religion and faith, you discover a poignant struggle within the hearts and minds of medieval Europe, a casting of light and shadow across spirituality and belief. This era, ravaged by disease, becomes a crucible, altering the course of religious thought and practice in ways both profound and enduring. Picture yourself within the grand aisles of a cathedral, under soaring arches etched with the echoes of prayer, and here, faith stands as both refuge and question, as the ecclesiastical world grapples with its own crisis of confidence. The massive scale of the pandemic incites doubt in even the most devout, as waves of grief and disillusionment ripple through communities. In many ways, the Church struggles to navigate its role amidst the devastation. Clerical ranks, decimated by the plague, find themselves stretched thin, with the surviving clergy bearing the impossible task of tending to the spiritual needs of their flock. The sacraments, especially those surrounding death and dying, are performed with haste, rites stripped to their essence as priests rush from bedside to bedside. Yet, while the institution as a whole faces challenges, individual acts of devotion continue to shine. Monasteries double down on charitable deeds, offering care to the sick and solace to the grieving, their resolve lit by the candle of faith unfaltering even under shadow. This dynamic interplay between institutional struggle and personal conviction creates fascinating ripples through society. You witness pious individuals seeking direct communion with the divine, embracing movements like mysticism and asceticism as pathways to personal salvation. The concept of an individual's relationship with God gains prominence, subtly transforming the religious landscape. In juxtaposition, cynicism and critique also swell murmurs, questioning why God's justice allows such suffering. As tales circulate of clerics retreating from their duties and the holy increasingly succumbing alongside the humble, cracks appear in the previously unassailable edifice of the Church, feeding seeds of discontent that will eventually contribute to future reformations. Historians continue to debate whether the period truly weakened ecclesiastical authority or merely redirected its influence. Did the devout ultimately cling more tightly to traditional structures, or did this introspection sow the roots for shifts in spiritual consciousness? The answers reside within layers of history, reflecting both continuity and evolution. One intriguing aspect involves local religious practices. You notice that, among the furrows, people returned to folk traditions and localized spirituality, blending official doctrine with old-world beliefs. In this amalgam, rituals find fresh expression, drawing from a tapestry of past wisdom and current needs. It's a quirky reflection, an impromptu blessing, a whispered invocation, a charm tucked carefully beneath a cassock. Conversely, many take solace in the burgeoning devotional art of the period. Reliquaries and icons proliferate, embodying both veneration and quiet introspection. These tangible connections become sources of comfort, imbuing rituals with a depth that transcends parchment or penance. Despite the turmoil, religion remains a steadfast presence, girding communities against despondency and fostering initiatives that endure beyond the immediate crisis. Faith-driven acts, whether tending to the sick, feeding multitudes, or keeping company with the suffering, demonstrate the capacity for love and charity amidst despair. As you step back to appreciate the breadth of this spiritual awakening, it's apparent that religion and faith during the Black Death become more than simply a response to adversity. They form a narrative prism through which the trials of this world illuminate the convictions of any age. Through the convergence of belief, doubt, and unity, the medieval world navigates the confluence of life's enduring questions, paving the way for spiritual resilience that withstands the test of time. Whether in hallowed halls or shadowed hearts, this epoch leaves a legacy of indoctrination and introspection that echoes still, reminding us of the eternal interplay between crisis and conviction, darkness and enlightenment. As the narrative unfolds, you shift your focus to the long-term psychological effects of the Black Death, revealing the profound scars etched upon the collective psyche of medieval Europe. The trauma of widespread loss and suffering casts a long shadow, inviting reflection on how humanity processes, adapts, and moves forward after such cataclysmic events. Imagine yourself in a village square, where the usual hum of daily life is muted by the quiet reflection of those who have weathered the storm. Survivors, marked by the dual burdens of grief and relief, find themselves navigating a world abruptly altered, one where every interaction, every choice, carries the weight of remembered lives and imagined futures. The psychological aftermath of the plague manifests in various ways. Some individuals withdraw into themselves, haunted by the memories of lost loved ones and the haunting presence of mortality. Others, conversely, embrace life with an urgency born of knowing its fragility, seeking meaning and joy in the everyday moments, often overlooked before the spectre of the plague. In this landscape of altered consciousness, an interesting dichotomy emerges. On one hand, the pull towards superstition and mystical explanations persists, as people seek to understand the incomprehensible. On the other, seeds of rational thought begin to take root, cultivated by the necessity of comprehending and surviving the incomprehensible. Communities struggle with shared memory, the indelible imprint of the plague creating complex networks of collective trauma. Folklore and oral traditions, laden with elements of truth and embellishment, perpetuate stories of both horror and heroism. These narratives serve as both a means of coping and a way of programming societal memory, ensuring that future generations remain aware of the perils that once beset their forebears. Historians often discuss how such pervasive trauma can leave a society feeling disjointed, prompting questions about the long-term impacts on culture and social structures. Did these experiences of shared tragedy foster greater empathy and community cohesion, or did they deepen social divides and nurture distrust? These questions remain open to interpretation, cradled within the folds of a past that continues to resonate. A lasting drive for memorialization defines this era, with memorials and shrines appearing in towns and fields. They stand as silent witnesses to the lives and losses endured. Some are grand cathedrals or intricately carved steles, others are simple markers in the earth, whispered prayers engraved upon stone. In this age of reflection, you notice emerging threads of existential contemplation and philosophical inquiry. There is a curious fascination with themes of mortality and the human condition. Kindled by the inexorable gaze of the Black Death, this introspection weaves into the fabric of art, literature, and spiritual discourse, laying the foundation for intellectual revolutions that will flourish in subsequent centuries. In society at large, the The psychological effects of the pandemic ripple through various aspects, influencing behaviors and attitudes. With the drastic reduction in population, survivors find themselves navigating altered social landscapes. Previously rigid hierarchies begin to shift, and social mobility becomes a burgeoning reality for some, a testament to both the psychological and material upheaval of the times. You also discover that the experience nurtures an emerging discourse on public health, as the realization dawns that communal well-being is intricately linked to individual resilience. This understanding, born of necessity, nudges communities toward cooperative endeavors, fostering early concepts of shared responsibility and solidarity. Still, despite these transformative shifts, the shadow of the plague lingers, its legacy felt not only in the scars upon the land, but in the collective memory it engraves. Survivors, as they piece together lives anew, embody a paradox of healing, resilient, yet touched by loss, hopeful, yet haunted by echoes of the past. As you contemplate this landscape of psychological transformation, you come to understand how these shared experiences shape the arc of human history. They serve as reminders that adversity tests and ultimately tempers the human spirit, weaving resilience into the intricate tapestry that forms the story of survival. In viewing this era through the lens of psychological aftermath, you glimpse both the lasting impact of trauma and the profound capacity for renewal. Humanity, though tested by plague and trial, demonstrates an enduring testament to endurance and adaptability, lessons written indelibly on the very fabric of time. Turning your attention to the sphere of knowledge and education, the impact of the Black Death reveals a complex narrative of decline and eventual recovery. The pandemic's reach extends far beyond physical health, carving transformative pathways through the domains of intellectual growth and learning. Picture yourself walking through the hallowed halls of a medieval university, once bustling with the energy of ambitious scholars and vibrant discourse. The air, heavy with the scent of ancient tomes and the eager whisper of quills on parchment, is now muted by the absence created by the plague. The loss of life echoes within these stone walls, depleting both the student body and faculty, and leaves a notable void in the pursuit of knowledge. The initial impact is stark, an unsettling pause in academic rigor, with institutions struggling to maintain their roles as bastions. Lectures and debates, once the heartbeats of intellectual endeavors, find themselves sidelined amidst the chaos. This decline is not only a result of diminished numbers, but also due to the profound psychological impact on those who remain. As you journey through this altered landscape, you notice the poignant struggle for continuity, a determination among surviving scholars to salvage and preserve the intellectual legacy. The commitment to education becomes an act of defiance against the invisible adversary, an assertion that knowledge remains a cornerstone even amid despair. While some institutions falter, others reinterpret their roles, fostering resilience through adaptation. The curricula evolve, incorporating new areas of study driven by the urgent need to understand the world in which they find themselves. Medical knowledge, anatomy, and early public health become focal points as the urgency to comprehend and combat the plague influences educational priorities. Interestingly, historians observe a downstream effect of this crisis on education. A decentralization of scholarly pursuits as smaller institutions rise to prominence. This decentralization diversifies educational landscapes across Europe, ushering in an era where new centers of learning proliferate, broadening access to intellectual exploration and nurturing diverse perspectives. Meanwhile, the role of vernacular languages in education grows, nudging aside the hegemony of Latin. With fewer scholars to uphold traditional conventions, the propagation of knowledge in the native tongue expands, crafting channels for broader societal engagement with scholarship. It's a poignant reminder that, even in struggle, innovation finds fertile ground. Additionally, the rise of the printing industry, spurred by necessity and the waning influence of monastic scribe monopolies, heralds a significant shift in the democratization of knowledge. Books, though still precious, become more widely produced and distributed, paving the way for an intellectual awakening that transcends elite academic circles. A particularly quirky tidbit finds roots in the proliferation of manuscript marginalia, playful sketches and commentary wedged alongside solemn texts, which emerged during this period, blending whimsy with scholarly thought. These annotations, budding with humour and creativity, act as testaments to the enduring spirit of inquiry and intellectual engagement amidst adversity. Despite the monstrous shadow of the Black Death, education persists as a beacon of perseverance. The era inadvertently contributes to the broader spread of literacy and the vibrancy of intellectual discourse, influenced not only by the immediate needs of the day but by the enduring quest for understanding. From within these devoted enclaves of learning, the sparks of curiosity and reason flicker defiantly, illuminating the path toward eventual rebirth. The challenges faced by academia during this period, though profound, sow seeds of transformation, shaping minds and institutions for the Renaissance's dawn. In reflecting on this intersection of plague and pedagogy, you realize that education and knowledge emerge not just as tools for survival, but as symbols of resilience and evolution. The experience distills into a rich, enduring lesson that the pursuit of knowledge, even when beset by darkness, persists as a pillar of human endeavor, lighting paths from shadow to enlightenment. This remarkable journey of intellectual resilience during the Black Death ignites a legacy that continues to inspire and reaffirm the power and promise of education, a light unwavering even in the face of life's great challenges. As the Black Death gradually releases its stranglehold on Europe, the transformative aftermath of such a calamitous event becomes evident. You find yourself within a world striving to recover, to stitch together the fabric of life that had been so violently torn apart. This period of transition is not merely about survival, but about rebuilding and reinventing a way of life amidst the echoes of the past. Imagine wandering through a town square that begins to hum softly back to life. Market stalls gradually regain their vibrancy, merchants cautiously return to their stations, and the air fills once more with the scents and sounds of commerce. The resilience of human endeavor becomes palpable as communities find new ways to fill their daily rhythms with a semblance of normalcy. Agricultural practices, once disrupted by the loss of labor, adapt to reflect a new reality. Fields and pastures see innovation, as crop rotations and new farming techniques rise to prominence, prompted by both necessity and an unexpected surplus of arable land. The recalibration of agrarian systems not only meets immediate needs, but also paves the way for enhanced productivity in years to come. Trade life's bloodline slowly revives, siblings of fear and necessity constructing fresh routes to ensure the continued flow of goods. These newly laid paths adjust to a world very much aware of global interconnectedness, laying the groundwork for advanced commercial practices that will shape future economic landscapes. The dwindled workforce gives rise to shifts in labor relations, with workers finding themselves in a newfound position of power. Negotiations for improved wages and conditions highlight an evolving dynamic between laborers and landowners, the altered balance initiating subtle yet significant social changes. In the wake of tragedy, the seeds of modern employment ethics and worker rights begin to germinate. Communal bonds, though scarred by loss, emerge reinforced and redefined. Families reconfigure, not simply by blood but through choice, weaving stronger networks of neighborly support and shared efforts. This newly forged kinship reflects humanity's ability to create meaningful connections even under duress, a profound illustration of community adaptation. In the realm of spirituality, while the Church as an institution struggles to rebound fully from its weakened state, personal faith flourishes. The quest for meaning or reconciliation with tragedy unfolds on individual pathways, often blending traditional beliefs with new personal revelations. This expanded spiritual landscape, though diverse in practice, shares a collective underpinning of hope and renewal. Historians still argue whether this period immediately following the plague was one of golden opportunity or persistent adversity. Evidence of both appears in records and relics, highlighting the era's dual nature as both a trial of character and a nurturing ground for ingenuity. Artists and creators, emerging from the shadow of illness, contribute richly to the reinvigoration of cultural life. From poignant memorials to vibrant works celebrating life and survival, creativity flourishes anew, propelled by an unquenchable human endeavor to document, interpret, and celebrate existence. An intriguing tidbit surfaces in creative expressions. Puppet theatre, marionettes deftly manipulated, become a narrative tool illustrating the return to vibrancy, with allegories of resilience performed in village squares. This blend of storytelling and entertainment not only amuses, but serves as a cathartic release for communities once mired in despair. Gradually, with purpose and passion, Europe finds ways to heal. As life resumes within its multifaceted forms, every human interaction a reminder of resilience, it becomes evident that history, even mired in darkness, contains embers of light fiercely fanned by human spirit. As you witness the patchwork of recovery, woven with threads of hope and resolve, you reflect on how societies adapt and redefine themselves. Each path rediscovered, each idea reinvented, and each life reclaimed pays homage to human perseverance and the unyielding quest for growth. Through the lens of history post-pandemic, the world sees how struggles can foster transformation, illustrating a relentless embrace of life's continuity, the enduring human dance from despair into dawn. Through these living chronicles, you capture a universal truth. Resilience, firmly rooted in the pursuit of betterment, becomes the beacon leading from the past's shadows into future realms of possibility. As you arrive at the culmination of this historical journey, the legacy of the Black Death stands both as a testament to hardship and as a beacon of extraordinary transformation. The echoes of this pandemic reach far beyond the immediate suffering, carving channels through which the course of human history would be irrevocably altered. Imagine yourself looking out over an expansive landscape, where the scars of the plague have been woven into the very fabric of the land, etched in both memory and presence. Nature, resilient and enduring, slowly reclaims and regenerates, while humanity sows seeds not just of recovery, but of profound change. One of the most significant legacies of the Black Death is its undeniable influence on social structures. The drastic reduction in population created seismic shifts in the feudal system, leading to increased social mobility and altered class dynamics. Fertile ground for change, the decline in available labourers empowers former serfs and peasants, granting them leverage previously unimaginable. This subtle yet potent shift seeds the beginnings of a more egalitarian society. The pandemic also fuels an intellectual and cultural renaissance as communities grapple with the impermanence of life. A fervent pursuit for understanding and expression blossoms. The profound questions that surfaced in whispered prayers and unspoken fears during the darkest days of the plague catalyze a cultural revolution. Art, literature, and scientific inquiry emerge invigorated, setting the stage for the Renaissance. A period of enlightenment and rebirth fueled by curiosity and creativity. Historians still debate the extent to which the Black Death directly contributed to this Renaissance. But the timelines suggest an undeniable correlation. The human desire to articulate, explain, and immortalize becomes a driving force as individuals and communities strive to frame their existence within the contours of beauty and knowledge. In the realm of medicine, the Black Death presents both a stark reminder of limitations and a fervent impetus for advancement. The seeds of early public health measures, budding understandings of contagion, and anatomical exploration plant themselves deep within the collective consciousness, providing a foundation upon which future generations build. The legacy of the Black Death extends beyond societal and cultural transformations. It imprints itself deeply in the psychological and spiritual psyche of humanity. The confrontation with mortality on such an epic scale fosters an existential reflection that continues to reverberate through time. Stories of loss, resilience, and triumph become woven into the very essence of societal narrative, imbuing future generations with both cautionary tales and aspirational epics. One quirky but enduring legacy is how the Black Death finds its way into folklore and popular imagination, acting as a source for endless myths, tales, and legend. Even today, the spectre of the plague hovers within works of fiction and art, its haunting shadow informing cultural narratives around disease and recovery, resilience and despair. As you consider the broader impact and lessons of the Black Death, it becomes poignantly clear how adversity shapes the human journey, simultaneously challenging and affirming the unyielding spirit of humanity. Each life touched, each community transformed, contributes to a larger tapestry, a testament to humanity's capacity to endure, adapt, and innovate. From these tales of survival and transformation, you draw a sense of continuity. Life's tenacious pursuit of progress, enriched by the lessons of past epochs, paving pathways toward the future. Even as the Black Death recedes into the annals of history, its indelible mark on humanity remains visible, a reminder that from the depths of despair, life finds renewal and strength. As this journey draws to an end, you take solace in the resilience and adaptability ingrained in the human spirit. These threads of history, interwoven with themes of challenge and triumph, resonate as whispers from the past, a comforting assurance that through obstacles and hardships, the flame of renewal burns ever vibrant, illuminating paths yet to come. Greater than greater than greater than greater. End of script. Sweet dreams.